Hello, and welcome to the HOS Podcast. You are listening to episode number 24, and we've got a really special guest today. We're talking with Richmond-based strength coach Russ Moon, and Russ came to us, or we got connected because his sister Sherry is actually a member at House of Strength. So this is a really cool connection, really cool opportunity for us to talk. Russ has over 3 decades in the strength and fitness community. He's been doing the kettlebell thing for over 9 years. He's got 4 certifications. 3 of those are in kettlebells. He's been coached by multiple world champions. So we're going to really dig in. We're going to talk about a lot of things that are going to help you get stronger, healthier, happier. And with all that said, Russ, welcome to the show. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us.
Thank you. I've been really psyched to get connected with the House of Strength. So this is like part of my bucket list happening in real time. So I'm totally jacked, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Nobody's ever said that we've been on their bucket list, so we must be doing something right.
You are. I want the T-shirt.
Oh, we'll get you one. We'll get you hooked up with one. So let's get right into this. In our communications before we actually set this up, you talked to me a little bit about something that you're involved with a supplement called Spirulina or Spirulina. What's going on with that, and how is that changing people's lives?
Okay, Spirulina algae. And I'm involved with a company in Virginia. In the U.S., spirulina is only grown on a large scale in 2 places, Hawaii and California. So we would be the first East Coast farm. I got involved with this because the farmer is one of my students and has been for a year.
Okay.
He's actually the Virginia Military Institute indoor shot put record holder.
No way.
And a total beast. He's added about 60 pounds to his deadlift in the last 6 months, and
that's
great
awesome.
guy.
When did he graduate from VMI?
He set the record in 99. I think he graduated in 2000 because he set the record his junior year.
Okay. My dad went to VMI, not goes. My dad's not still in college.
Okay. My Uncle Lee is in the VMI Sports Hall of Fame. He was an offensive center. I defected and went to the Citadel, which I'm still getting a lot of grief over, but they're both great schools, and I have immense respect. They're our sister school.
Definitely.
So I have nothing but respect for VMI, and that was actually why I sought this guy out. I stalked him for about 3 years to meet him, and when I met him, I said, I'm not here because you're a prominent farmer, and I want to fish the bass ponds on your farm, but I will, and I do. I'm not here because I wanted to train you, and I will, and that's been a year ago. I said, here's why I sought you out. I said, I sought you out because you went to VMI, and we live by an honor code, and my best friend is a VMI grad, and I know I never have to worry about you lying, cheating, or stealing from me, so we don't have to be the same. But that trust and integrity will be the foundation for our relationship.
That's cool. That's such a cool story.
And he looked at me and he just nodded like, yep, I get that.
So what's he doing on this farm, or what made him start that? That's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So what happened was I got involved with his nutrition because I was watching his training. He was going up, and there was some body composition issues which needed to be addressed in terms of getting leaner. And so, without smothering him in the beginning, I just opened my eyes. I went in his kitchen. I kind of looked around. What's he eating? And I decided it wasn't as really holistic as his workouts were. Okay. So I went and got him. I looked, he was taking some protein and some other things. And I'm like, dude, this stuff is junk. I know I'm going to go to Richmond and get you something better. And I brought him this big 5-pound bag of a better protein that had some other things in it. I said, not only is this better, it's going to save you $50 or $60 a month. Instead of buying these 2 things separate, they're all in this, and it's better. I use it. I know it's good. So he's like a big farm guy, and he takes this 5-pound bag, and folds it up and stuffs it under his arm like it's a newspaper. And he takes his cell phone and he goes, Russ, what do you know about supplements? Look at this. Tell me what that is. And I looked at it, and it was an amino acid nutritional profile breakdown. All the amino acids, what percent. I looked at it and I said, wow, that's pretty jacked. What is it? He goes, it's spirulina. Get in my truck. So he's growing this stuff on his farm like it's the Delta Force compound. And he takes me back there and shows it to me. And I'm like, and I saw the nutritional data of what was in it, which we'll get to in a second. And I'm like, I want some of that. I want to try this, because if this is half of what I think it is, this is going to be pretty good. So we're in total startup mode. You know, the website's still going up, because what we focused on is growing algae is not as simple as people would say, oh, I see algae at the pond. They're all different types. They're not all the same.
Right.
You know, some of the ones that come in from other countries have heavy metals like mercury, and that's why they're so cheap, because when you look at origin of the product, it'll either have nothing because they don't want you to know where it, and I didn't know this until I got involved.
Okay.
I thought it was all the same.
Right.
But some of them don't show the place of origin because they don't want you to know that that place has a reputation of having mercury and lead, and that's why it's so cheap. It's dirty.
Right.
And then other places where it's grown in salt water, there are other organisms that get into the spirulina, such that when you buy what's called spirulina, it's not pure. It has filler, just like a vitamin that has filler to hold it together.
Right.
Now, what we're growing is pure. So it's filtered water. It's in an enclosed environment. It's highly regulated. We're getting pure pure spirulina, and it has a beautiful color to it. It looks like the color of billiard table cloth, and It's ground up like coffee. And we've actually done every batch we make, we do nutritional analysis on it to keep tweaking the formula. So for instance, when we started, our sodium content was about 4%. Most of the spirulina on the market is about 6 to 8, which is still low. So this is safe for people that are watching their water intake, i.e. you bodybuilders before the contest. This isn't going to bloat you up.
Right.
But our newest batch of spirulina, we dropped the sodium from 5% to under 1.
How do you do that?
So it's through the cultivation process, which is proprietary. It's through the fertilizers and how you cultivate it. And we've engaged PhD level people from Stanford, Harvard. And so it's like, I'm kind of the mad scientist. I'm like, okay, let's get the sodium down. And there are ways to enhance the amino acid profile to jack it up naturally. Because spirulina is plant-based. It's all natural, totally organic, gluten-free, lactose-free. You know, for all the CrossFit people that are like, I want lactose-free, gluten-free. Mm-hmm. As a CrossFitter, I saw this and I'm like, man, they'll eat this up. But it's the short answer is it's the way you cultivate it.
Okay. So is it a complete protein? And you know, I guess that leads into something you said that we would touch on early, you know, down the road with the complete nutritional profile. I mean, what are we talking?
Yep. I've got a few bullet points here. Like I mentioned to you, my IT guys wiped out my printer driver, but I've got a couple key points. By the way, my wife is an MD, and when I said spirulina to her the first time, she goes, she's an internal medicine infectious disease out of Seton Hall, so not exactly a non-cerebral person. The first word out of her mouth was, hey, that's a superfood, and people are recommending this over even salmon because the salmon and tilapia are popping up with higher levels of mercury. Mm-hmm. And she also mentioned that with fish oil. She said that was the rage, but it's going out of favor because of mercury. You don't want to obviously ingest mercury. So here's what spirulina's got. So the first thing I've got, it's got all the required 8 essential amino acids. It also has the non-essential amino acids, which doesn't mean they're not essential. It just means that's their name. They have other functions, and I'm not going to go through each one and say, this one does this.
Right.
But they're in a form that is very important to note this. It's easier for the body to digest than meat or soy protein. Easier to digest. So in other words, if I ate some fish or some red meat, particularly red meat, I mean, it's good for you in a lot of ways, but it gives me a really heavy feeling. And I can't train immediately after that unless I want to eat it 2 times.
Right.
And I don't. The one time is enough. With spirulina, it's so easy for me to digest this. I can drop it in my protein drink, some water, a shaker bottle, and I can take it 30 minutes before I train, and it almost feels like it's just going right into my muscle, but it's not heavy on my stomach at all. So that was like one of my first indicators. I'm like, here's what the paper says, but if I can drink this 30 minutes prior and all it's doing is jacking me up, but it's doing nothing to my stomach, that must be true.
Right.
So that was that's pretty powerful right there, because really it's not how much you can take in, it's how much your body can absorb.
Right.
But a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, absorption is very important, and you know, no matter what you eat, if you're not getting it, if it's not getting where it needs to be, then you know you might as well not be
taking it. Right.
So,
Well, it took me a while to figure that out. I was thinking, if I take 300 grams of protein, it's better than 100. If it's the wrong type and it's not getting absorbed, it's just going down the commode.
Right.
I mean, it's not going in your muscles. Okay, B12, spirulina contains, this is just to show you when I try to describe it in one word. I say, this stuff is potent.
Right.
Here's what potent means when I say it. So spirulina contains 250% more B12 than beef liver, which was thought to be nature's richest source.
So you always hear with B12 that you have to get it from animal products. So I guess, would algae technically be considered a plant?
It is a plant.
So, I mean, we're talking, this is a plant-based vitamin B12 that is higher concentrations than any...
250% more than beef liver.
That's amazing.
I didn't know all this before I got in the industry and started.
I can't my B12 argument against vegetarians anymore.
Okay, so vitamin E. Spirulina contains more vitamin E per gram than pure wheat germ.
Okay.
Just kind of giving a couple. There's a million of these here. Okay.
What about like the macronutrient content? Are we talking per serving? What is the serving size? How much protein, carbs is there fat in it? Does it have some omega-3s?
Okay. I'm gonna go through the points I have, and then I'll circle back to this and get as close to a good answer as I can.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another little piece that initially I read it. I said, that's nice, but I didn't make the connection until I took it and started training while I took it. This has chlorophyll.
Mm-hmm.
Chlorophyll is called green blood because it's similar to hemoglobin found in human blood cells. In World War II, they used this as an antiseptic to help heal wounds. And I thought it also helps in regeneration of damaged liver cells. And it also controls nerve impulses that control contractions. So it helps slow your heart rate, yet each contraction of the heart is increased in power, thus increasing the overall efficiency of cardiac work. So when I read this in the paper, in the document, I was like, that's nice. But the third day I took spirulina because I'm one of these guys, where I log on my Gym Boss. I did a Tabata, this kilogram swings. I did this many reps. This was my last workout. 3 days after I started taking this, my volume went up 20%, but I felt less winded.
Right.
My heart wasn't really beating as hard, and I was like going, that's odd. I just did 20% more, but I don't feel smoked. Then I remembered this chlorophyll thing, and I was like, ooh, I bet that's what it is. And I had these deep scratches on my arm. I'd caught this huge trophy largemouth bass. I was running through the woods to weigh it, and these briars cut like 3 big grooves in my arm. It looked like a tattoo or a scar. And I went in to see the manager of a vitamin store, health food store, and I noticed that 4 days after taking the spirulina, these scratches that had been there for 3 weeks vanished. And I was thinking, I'm going to show her my arm. And I got in there, and I didn't even have the chance to say it. She looked at me and she went, oh my God, those scratches on your arm are gone. What have you done? Then she paused. I didn't say anything. I was smiling. I'm like, I didn't even get the chance to get this out. She noticed. That's not my imagination. She goes, you're taking that spirulina, aren't you? And I said, yep, it's the only thing I've changed. I said, all I can say is I feel like Columbus discovering America. I know it's been around since the Aztecs, but it's pretty intense.
That's awesome.
Okay. Here's a little caloric standpoint, and this will kind of start hitting on some of the things you asked me earlier. Okay, so you would have to consume 18.5 calories of raw 75% lean ground beef to obtain a gram of protein. Okay, so the average 500 milligram tablet of spirulina contains only 1 to 2 calories. So this is very low, almost no fat.
Right. It's
just amino acids, vitamins, minerals, chlorophyll, no lactose, no glucose. I mean, that's why, as I kept reading this, I'm like, okay, that's why they're calling this a superfood. It's got all the alpha carotene, beta carotene. I can provide this. Well, you have a copy of this.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll post the PDF on a hosting site, and in our show notes, I can put a link to it so folks can download this information.
Yeah, and I'd like them, I'm into no BS, provide the facts where you're drawing your stuff from. And this isn't about our spirulina. This is about spirulina in general.
Right.
So I tried to make it unbiased.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question about your spirulina. You said you guys are kind of in the startup phase. Is this something that you guys are going to be packaging and selling?
Well, we're starting to sell some now as part of the improving the formula process. Mm-hmm. We've had 2-3 harvests, and each harvest has been pre-sold before it ever came out of the chute.
Okay.
So the people that I took some to one of my students. I'm like, try this. I come back 2 days later to train him, and the guy's trying to shove $1,000 in cash into my hand. He said, buy me as much of this as you can get. I don't care how much it costs. And I'm like, dude, I don't want $1,000. Just give me $300, and I'll get you, I'll get you hooked up if you like it that much. But the good thing was that was the first batch. He got the second batch, which I said, when I took it, I said, this is twice as strong as the first one, because we made this as a sample for a anonymous world champion lifter. And I said, if we're going to send XYZ person who anybody would know their name, I said, I want this stuff like the juice, except it's natural. I said, if you can jack the aminos up, jack them up. If you can jack these other things, and they did. And now the guy told me he only has to take it once every 3 to 2 days, and he's getting more effect than when he was taking the previous one every day.
Wow. That's crazy.
So here's the dose question, because you asked me that.
Yeah.
Because I'm Cro-Magnon man. I'm just taking it because it's so clean. I'm taking it until I get the response, and then I went back and I weighed how much I was taking on a digital scale to find out. So the general rule of thumb with spirulina is about 3 to 4 grams per 175 pounds of body weight. So for me, and if you're in doubt, round up. So I'm between 175 and 350. I'm at 265. So I'm taking 7 grams a day. Okay. And that worked out that when I got a pound, it lasted me right at today is 1 month, and I've run out. Okay. But there have been a couple days I've double dipped when I've had some kind of heavy, 7 sets of 5 with 315 deadlift in 10 minutes. That day I was smoked. I took 2. I'm like, I need a little extra to come back from that because that's put the hurt on me. And so a couple times I double dipped. It just depends on what the person's going to do. But they fed rats their entire body weight of spirulina, and all they did was get leaner and get more muscular. So, I mean, 7 grams a day is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, this is, I mean, it's a plant. It's a food. I mean, it'd be no different than eating a boatload of kale or spinach. It's just...
Right.
Okay.
Right, especially if your spirulina is pure.
Right.
It doesn't have the mercury and the lead, and right. I mean that stuff can accumulate from the local groundwater. So you need to test for it to say if we have it in ours, then there are ways to put osmosis pumps and things that make sure that goes way down to the non-concern level.
Right. Well, all right. So I got 2 questions for you off of some of the stuff that you just mentioned.
Okay.
You said you've had a couple of harvests. How long does it take to cultivate it to the harvest point? And how much are you guys producing per harvest? Is that something that you can scale up? I realize some of that may be proprietary, but...
Yes, it is proprietary, and yes, I can answer parts of it. Okay, so here's the way I will phrase this. If someone wants to purchase some of this and they're serious... And I talked to the people at the farm yesterday, and I said, anyone who gets what I'm saying is going to say, I think I'd like to try some of that. Right. I mean, everyone who's touched it has gone so nuts, they're buying it faster than we can grow it. And it's not because they don't like it. And when I see a world champion saying, this is a lifetime best, I wondered why I hadn't heard from him. First, I thought, maybe he's not dosing it right. I said, no, I've sent him 3 videos. That's not it. Maybe it's not working. I'm like, no, I've set 9 PRs in 1 week. And then the third option hit me. I'm like, this might be working. And he's like trying every workout that he knows to go, well, I wonder what I can do with this one now. And all of a sudden when he posted a farmer's walk with double 120 kilos in each hand and said, that's the first time in my life I'm doing it. I went to the farm and I said, And then they send a note to Magnuson saying, I hope you boys are ready for the workout tomorrow. I said, somebody's feeling pretty jacked because you don't say that to Magnuson unless you must want a beat down. And I said, guess what? When his product runs out, I bet we're going to hear from him again. And no wonder he's not talking about it.
Yeah.
He wants to keep that to himself, of which I respect that, but I think it's funny. So the way if someone wants to get one, they can just contact me and said, hey, I want to get in line to get some of this. Tell me how much I can buy. And what I can do is it's on a first come, first serve, prepaid in advance. We're growing it to order. We've got all these consultants on board, and the quality was not bad to begin with. It was good.
Right.
And I compared this to what I could get in a store, and we actually dry ours a different way from most people. They use what's called a flash drying process, and that heavy heat actually kills a lot of the nutritional content. Mm-hmm. So think about if you went to like a school cafeteria where they boil the carrots until they're like white. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
So with ours, it's kind of like a NutriBullet where you're pulling the carrot in there and liquefying it, because our process of drying preserves all that protein and the aminos and everything else. It's still there. But that's also costs more to do it that way. So we're not going to be the least expensive, but I've tried several brands, and I can say with no reservation whatsoever, for anyone who's ever had spirulina, if they had what they were using and they tried ours, they would A, notice a momentous difference, and B, I don't think they would ever be satisfied with the other one again. I mean, we've had major wholesalers look at ours and go, It smells great. It tastes great. It looks great. How many tons of this can we, so the quality is there, and we decided work on the product before you start selling it. Don't tweak it on the fly. Get it together. So it takes about a couple weeks to go from having the medium in there to the medium thickening enough to where you can harvest a certain part, and then you have to leave some of it in there so it can regrow.
Gotcha.
And this is all on like a pseudo hydroponic thing where there's water being pumped in there. It's fertilized on like an hourly basis, and there are points in the process where you change the fertilization when it gets to a certain stage of growth. It's not just like, well, I can go to my farm pond and scoop some up the top and it'll be the same thing. No, it won't.
Right.
Does that answer part of your question?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. So you said if people are interested, then they can contact you. How would you like to be contacted? Is there a minimum order? Can you give us an idea of pricing?
Pricing is going to be based on the quantity.
Okay.
Because I'm still in the process of looking to see who might want to be, and we're targeting this for athletes and gym owners. I'm looking for gym owners that may want to say, hey, if this isn't going to be in Walmart, Target, XYZ, and they have to get it from me, I'd like to sell it. So if I'm selling to someone as a distributor, that's going to be a different price than somebody says, I want 1 pound versus I want 20 pounds.
Gotcha.
And I want to try to distribute it. So that's going to vary. So I would like to kind of talk offline on the pricing, but to kind of give a comparison that I did that people can relate to, people wouldn't hesitate. And I've got some right behind me. People would not hesitate to pay $40 for a 3-pound bag of very concentrated whey protein that when you look at the serving size may have 15 servings. So that's not even going to last you. If you took one a day, you're looking at 2 weeks.
Right.
So what I'm saying is a pound of our product is going to go a month.
Gotcha.
So it's not, when you do the math, you're like, if I'm willing to pay this much for 2 weeks, and this is close to that, and a month is at my serving as a 265 pounder, for a more normal person that weighs 175, or for a female that's 125, that pound is going to last 2 months.
Yeah.
So that chops the price to a point. It doesn't. I'm not ashamed to say this is how much it is, because when you look at what you're taking and what you're going to get, it's a bargain. I've also noticed on my other supplements, I've been able to cut down a little bit because so many of them are in the spirulina. I'm getting the lift off that, and I'm not having to take as many branched chain aminos. I'm not having to take as much multivitamins because I'm getting it naturally from the spirulina. So that's actually lowered my other supplement bill. And I was like, well, good grief, with the $25 I save for this, that's paying for 3/4 of a pound. This is a pretty, I kind of got privately excited.
Yeah.
It's better. It costs less. It's giving me all these PRs. Why not? So the best way to contact me, to answer your question right now, is Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook. I have literally right now, my IT team is on my blog page they're in day 2 of making changes to my new website, which will have all the ways you can engage me, whether it's kettlebells, one-to-one, group training, distance coaching, all that's going to be on a menu.
Awesome.
It's got a link to my book. It's got a contact page. I proofed it last night and gave him some changes, and I got a note from him this morning. But the way to find me online, it's real simple. You would just go Russ Moon, RUSSMOON, and Google me. And if you do that, right at the top of the page, it's going to show my site, my book, my LinkedIn profile, or Facebook. I'm not hard to find, but Facebook is the best way to initially get contacted with me, with me until I get my website fully up.
Okay.
And then that would be the place to go to like engage me. But Facebook, I can say, hey, thanks for the join. I'm not one of these people that if you, and you've learned this, if you email me, I'm not some guy that comes back 7 days later. I'm pretty much, I got yours. It was like an hour, 2 hours. And that's from my recruiting days. If someone reaches out to me, as soon as I get it in real time, I will ping them to say, I know you're out there. I know you're contacting me. Let's do this. So if someone reaches out to me, they are gonna get me.
Cool. Well, that's cool. I've got one more question on that, the spirulina, before we move on to some more like training related topics. But as you were talking about kind of manipulating the formula and jacking certain things up, and again, I realize some of this is proprietary. So if it's protected and you can't share it, I do understand. But I'm just in my head, this sounds, I mean, this is not genetically modifying it. You're talking about ways of extracting or harvesting to improve that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a good question, because everything that's coming out now is like non-GMO.
Right.
It's what you're talking about, not genetically modifying the product. So we have the actual strain of algae that we started our farm with had to be non-GMO.
Right.
Because like people get into this and they think it's just algae. It's not true. It's regulated. There are only certain strains you can use to make spirulina, and you have to show where yours came from and that it was non-GMO.
Okay.
So we're not doing anything to modify the algae. It's just the way we're cultivating and feeding it is increasing the potency of what it does, but it's not changing. I mean, the amino acid molecular structure is already there.
Right.
We're just helping it along.
Gotcha.
And it's through the process of how it's cultivated and the timing of the fertilization. It's, I would have never known it was this complex until I started going over there and getting involved and walking through the vats and going, it's just not that all of this for this little bag of powder. Now I understand.
Yeah, and that's what I can totally relate to that, because the more you explain, the more I see how much goes into it and the more questions I have. And I mean, again, proprietary, I understand, but I mean, what does algae eat?
It's more, okay, so it's a plant. It's in a water-like environment, and it's through osmosis taking in what's in the water.
Okay.
And absorbing it. It's also absorbing some sunlight,
right,
depending on your greenhouse and how much sun you're allowing it to get or how much it's able to get. So it's getting its color. That green color is that chlorophyll, which is generated through it receiving sunlight. And then it's because it's in that aquatic environment, it's absorbing what's in the water, which is why previously, when I mentioned there were 2 other farms in the U.S. that grow this,
right,
one is growing theirs in a saltwater environment.
Okay.
But that salt water has elements, micro organisms, which are not spirulina.
Okay.
But because the spirulina is absorbing that salt water, it's not, they'll say certified organic, and the USDA doesn't even have that.
Well, it's diluting the purity of spirulina in the finished product.
Yes.
Right.
It's like saying, it's 10% whey protein and 90% filler, but we're going to call it organic whey protein. Okay. It's not. We know all the protein powders are not the same.
Right.
And that's the analogy I make for the normal person. Don't think that these are the same, because they're far from being the same. Now that I know the differences, there's some of them I would not even dare put in my body. Now that I know that whole mercury lead thing, it's like, I don't need to get pumped up to get cancer.
Right.
I don't want to do that. But what I like about our grower, with his engineering ground, he's a bit of a mad scientist, and he wants to keep tweaking everything. And every time he tweaks something, when we got the data back on this last batch, I'm like, wow, the sodium was at 5 or 6%, which was lower than the competition. And now it's 1 and the second batch was under 1. I'm like, wow, even somebody on a low sodium diet could eat this all day long, and it's not going to make them retain water. It's not going to puff them up.
Right. That's
So
awesome.
we're doing, the same thing with some of the, other components. I don't think we're going to take this to the, gamma ray level, but we want to make it to where when someone takes it, they're really getting the full benefit, and they can see, compared to having taken another product, that this one is like very concentrated. It's like Surf versus Tide. One quarter scoop of Tide is like 3 scoops of Surf because it has filler in it.
Gotcha.
Nothing against Surf, so don't sue me. I'm just making an analogy.
Yeah. Well,
I've used Surf before.
This is really fascinating. I had no idea that there would be that much to the process, and that we would even talk this much about it. So, before we hit record, we definitely had a couple of things that we knew we wanted to hit on, and I think, Russ, what I'd like to do is, we'll get into some training stuff and some kettlebell stuff. One of the other big topics that we wanted to hit was breathing, and I think if you're game, what I'd like to do is shelf the breathing and maybe have you back on down the road, and we'll do another podcast episode with you, because I think there is a lot more there, and I don't want to try to, crunch that down and
circuit it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about training, and we mentioned in your introduction that you've got over 3 decades in the industry, a couple of different kettlebell certifications. We're going to do a wardrobe change here to reflect one of your certifications.
You knew I was going to do that, and you still laugh.
I know. So your shirt, you are a CrossFit certified coach. Let's talk a little bit about your certifications and your kind of philosophy on training.
Okay. So my certifications, CrossFit kettlebell instructor, level 1, CrossFit trainer, hardstyle certified kettlebell instructor. That's through Dragon Door. And then also Strong First, which is Pavel Tsatsoulin's organization that he formed after leaving the RKC, which is Dragon Door. Mm-hmm. So he helped found the RKC, and then he went out a couple years ago and formed Strong First. So I'm also certified as a kettlebell instructor through Strong First, and I have had the honor to meet Pavel and to receive a great deal of one-to-one coaching. I'm all about, so those are my certifications.
Yeah, and for people who don't know that name, Pavel is, that's a legendary name in the strength industry. And if you don't know that name, I'm going to have a link to where you can get more in the show notes, because, that's really cool. That's really cool.
I tell people, Pavel, and I hope if he hears this, he's not offended. It's like Madonna. You say Pavel and you put in kettlebell to Google, and you'll find him.
Yeah.
He is the gentleman who brought over the kettlebell invasion, and he combined with John Duquesne of Dragon Door, and they originated the RKC. He was Rolling Stone's Trainer of the Year about 12 years ago. He's trained a lot of celebrities, and the people he works with on a regular basis are world record holders, pro athletes, anti-terrorist groups, the SEALs, and a lot of people I don't know about because I don't have a need to know. But in other words, the people he's running with are your top 1 percenters very easily. And he's top 50 strength coach of all time. And he brought the whole Russian system over, of how they trained in the Soviet Union. And I wanted to study that, and I'd wanted to meet him for 9 years. I wanted to be the moth that got close enough to the flame to really get in his head and figure out, where is this coming from? How does he think? How does this work? And I've told him this personally. There's no way I would be where I'm at my age had I not had exposure to him. So, he's one of the greatest coaches and strength teachers, I think, on the planet Earth.
That's really cool that you've been able to kind of connect with him and benefit that much. What I guess what did that do in terms of education and kind of molding your philosophies? What were some of the biggest things that you gleaned from that?
Good grief. I mean, that's a whole book. I would say in a nutshell, I asked him early on in our relationship, I said, of all the people you've met, but I want to go back to the training piece because it will kind of fill in some blanks.
Okay.
I went to CrossFit because I wanted to learn how they did things.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be a hater who was ignorant.
Right.
I said, I'm going to immerse myself in their program, and I'm going to take everything that works for me and my students. And if I don't like something or it doesn't work, it doesn't mean I have to use it. But I think there's a lot there that's awesome, but I'm going to need to do it to learn it, not just say that's not good.
Right. And that's that Bruce Lee philosophy. You have to take what's useful and, discard the rest. But if you never look into and explore and investigate, you're only shortchanging yourself. And you
take what works, throw away the rest. And I probably got that from Bruce Lee because I like him too. But he had all these different styles of martial arts, which became his own. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to study Jeff Martone, who's the global kettlebell guy at CrossFit. I want to see how he programs because he's renowned as being a good programmer and a great kettlebell teacher, North American record holder in sport kettlebell. I'm like, I want to get inside his head, read his books, go through his system, and see what DNA I pick up.
Yeah.
Then I went to Dragon Door, and I took my HKC because one of my goals, I like the Turkish get-up a lot. And so Brett Jones, who's a master instructor with Strong First, he and Gray Cook had written this book, Kalos Stenos, Beautiful Strength, and it was all about the Turkish get-up. And I'm like, okay, I had all these materials for several years, and I'm like, I want to face the master. I want to talk to Brett in private, and I want to flex what I think I know on him, full in the knowledge that if I'm wrong, he's going to gun me down, but I want to see if I know what I think I know.
Yeah.
So I certed under him on purpose in order to meet him, and I got about 30 to 40 minutes with him one-on-one. I was getting ready to leave, and I was tired, putting on my coat, and I turned, and he was standing right there, and he said, I enjoyed meeting you, and shook my hand. I thought, nobody else is in the room. Wow. And we started talking, and I'm like, here's what I think I've learned. And I'm just going blah, 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 and he's going, and he finished, and he said, you're all over this. So that was my validation. If the guy that wrote the books, and I said, and putting the presses in does this, and this does this, and he was kind of telling me, yeah, you're on it. And that's why I went there. And I also wanted to see how the RKC taught.
Gotcha.
And then I used these as my warm-up for Strong First as dress rehearsals. I think I'm in this condition. What is my condition when I get to the cert? What's the difference? What would I say? Do this different? Because when I got to them, they're pretty. How should I put it? They're pretty strong.
Yeah.
So I mean, Pavel walked over. The people who were 50 or older were swinging a 20 kilo. The under 50s were swinging a 24. He walked up to me and brought me the only 48 kilo in the room, set it down in front of me and said, this is your weight for the day. And I'm in Utah at altitude, and I'm thinking,
oh, man.
And my trainer, my assistant behind me, she's like, OMG. That doesn't mean he doesn't like you. It means he thinks you're strong. It's like, don't worry, Russ and I've had some conversations. I'm like, yeah, thanks for the gumball. So 16 bottles of water later, 800 swings, 200 cleans. We got to the military press phase, and he says, that's your practice weight. You're going to rep max that. Now, I knew at the time that maybe 10% of his people could press that.
Right.
And I was like, okay, you notice I'm still here, still talking smack. And by the way, what's the course record? Because I'm going to send you a message. I want you to count the reps. So I knew that from different books, the most anyone I'd ever read of doing was Kenneth J, who's a guy in Europe who's done like Viking warrior conditioning and, some different cardiovascular strength training things. And the number was 7. I wound up with 7 presses with my right hand, grounded the kettlebell, cleaned it with my left, and did 6 more at the end of the day. And Pavel said, after all you've done today to do what you just did, that is pretty freaking awesome. And I thought, for someone who works with world record holders, freaking awesome is not a phrase I've ever heard him use 20 times in a book or verbally in 9 years. So I thought, well, I don't know what I just did other than survive, but he thinks it's something semi-significant.
That's awesome.
And we stayed in touch, after that. And he's, we would talk about my program. I would kind of give him a little report, and it's kind of like with these senior guys, world champions, these high-level people, I found it's perform or die. They'll give you something. If you don't do it, they don't talk to you again. Mm-hmm. If you come back and said, you told me to do this, I did this, and by the way, I added 20 pounds to this month, then they'll say something like, change the rep scheme to this, take this out, put this in, keep everything the same, and a month later you do this again.
Right.
Well, that arrangement lasted now 22 months.
Okay.
So I've hung in the ring for 22 months of going over that level of scrutiny, and he, by his own admission, he doesn't tolerate fools well. He gets bored easily, and if he doesn't agree with something you say, he'll just be like, either that's not correct or we disagree on this. There's no sugarcoating, which I didn't want any, but I wasn't getting any.
Right.
But I've learned a lot. He said the top people, the top 1%ers have 2 things in common. Number 1, they have an extremely narrow focus. Extremely narrow. So in other words, when I read into that a little bit, it's like they have broken down what's the Pareto principle. What is the 20% that's driving the 80%? Mm-hmm. And they live in the 20%. Mm-hmm. And the other thing he said, they have extreme attention to detail. So the way I would say this to the normal, person's going, okay, that could mean a lot of things. Well, it's everything. One example is, you might obsess and spend 6 months perfecting your setup on your deadlift, your grip, your anti-shrug, your elbow lock, the angle of your back, how you're pushing into the floor. And it's just like miraculous when you focus on these he said the best people do the simplest things better than everyone else. It's because they practice what everyone else either doesn't know what to do, or if they know it, they don't have the discipline to do it.
Yep.
And everything else kind of bubbled out as an offshoot of here are the things that are really important, and here's some of the details. He's a little cryptic in that he does not spoon feed me the information. I have to say, I did this, and here's what I learned from it, and he'll be like, that is correct. He'll validate it, but he makes you learn it.
Right.
And if you don't learn it fast enough, you're shown the door.
Yeah.
So, it does keep you very motivated as a student. It's like, I got to bring my A game every session of this month because, Judgment Day is coming when I've got to say my pull-ups were this much last month, and now I'm doing this, or here's the video of my pretzel laying both my shoulders all the way down. At a certain point, you have to prove it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. So, I'd like to kind of take that and let's kind of transform that into something that the listeners can kind of take with them into the gym, and how can what are some benefits of kettlebell training and as a tool that people can have in their toolbox. Let's kind of turn that into something that the listeners can use.
Okay, the benefits of kettlebells. Okay, I can think of I'm not going to go into all of them for time purposes, but I'm going to go into some of the ones that people are very unaware of, but they are part of the 20%. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Kettlebells are actually very, very safe when used correctly. And the reason for that is their shape. So we think of a kettlebell as a cannonball with a handle or an offset handle. So the offset handle is the difference. If you were to pick up a dumbbell, the axis is in the center of the weight.
Mm-hmm.
With an offset handle, a 35-pound kettlebell feels heavier to the body than a 35-pound dumbbell because of the offset handle. You with me?
Yep, absolutely.
So the second piece of that is because it feels heavier to the body, you can get stronger with weights that are relatively lighter, which is safer for the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like weightlifters say, Louis Simmons says, make your heavy weights feel light, make your light weights feel heavy.
Yep.
Your body doesn't know the difference.
Right.
Doesn't know the difference with the kettlebell either. So that's why when people say, well, I'm only pressing 106 pounds, how's that going to make my 300-pound bench go up? It's because your body is feeling a lot more tension and resistance because of that offset handle. The offset handle with your pressing, with the barbell, you're like this. Mm-hmm. Shoulder is like exposed out of the socket. With the kettlebell, because of the offset handle, that's wrapped around my hand, and I'm right like this, where my shoulder's down in the socket, and I'm going straight up. It's a lot easier on your joints. Mm-hmm. Your shoulders. I've seen people cert with 2 artificial knees and hips. It's very low impact on your hips, knees, and elbows and shoulders with proper technique. And that is another reason you should do it, because if you can get strong, and maybe if you're 20 and you're still in that I'm invincible mode, okay, I've been there. I felt when I was a paratrooper I would never die, and if my chute broke, I would just walk off the drop zone. Okay, I've been in that phase, but at a certain point, reality hits, and so if you can limit the wear and tear and build muscle and get stronger, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah, and that's the name of the game is longevity. I mean, we're not, at least, at House of Strength, and for our people listening, we're training people who want to be in this for the long haul. And,
yes.
So anybody who's ever done accessory work, as like you said, pressing specifically, go do dumbbell bench press or dumbbell incline bench press, and then swap your dumbbells for the same weight of a kettlebell. It feels a lot harder. It's a lot different. And like you said, it's that offset weight.
Yep. And so, and it mixes well with the barbells and the kettlebell and the dumbbells and the machines, because it makes your grip so much stronger. You're getting automatic grip work because of the offset handle. Killer on the abs. And what I find is, in March of this year, I did 15,000 swings with a 48 kilo, and that's all I did. And when I finished, I added 30 pounds to my deadlift in 1 month, but I hadn't deadlifted.
Yeah.
I added 15 pounds to my military press, but I hadn't pressed in a month. 15 pounds to my bench, 2 pull-ups. I went up a Captain of Crush gripper from the 1.5 to the 2.0, and the hits kept rolling in, and I'm like, wow, well, this is why Donnie Thompson and all these, world record power lifters are including kettlebell work in their programs, because it's driving their barbell strength gains while preserving their bodies.
Yeah.
And that just made sense to me.
Yeah, and you know what? Before we came on the air, we talked a little bit, and you call it the what the heck programming. So to me, that is exactly, that's a perfect example of your what the heck. So, and for people listening,
that is.
I'll let you explain it, but it's basically, we want the biggest bang for our buck, the highest return for our investment on the things that we put into our own workouts, the programming of our athletes. If we can do nothing but one exercise that's going to make 7 or 10 or everything else better, that's what we're going to do. And that's that 80-20 philosophy too. So I guess
right.
Give us in your words or tell us a little bit about, some what the heck programming.
Okay, so the what the heck effect is the process. So they actually call it something else. You can imagine, or people you will see it, they will abbreviate it as WTHE. But I don't like using acronyms with people that aren't familiar with them because that's not cool. Mm-hmm. That's like somebody from CrossFit saying AMRAP and you don't know what it means. It's like you're talking Czechoslovakian to me. Tell me what the acronym means, enlighten me. So it's the what the heck effect, which is what someone says when you swing a month and you're like, I'm tired of swinging. I want to go do some deadlifts. And all of a sudden you're like, man, that feels so light. Yeah. That was a joke. Let me put some more on there. And you're like, I haven't been doing this for a month. And so once you ever make that connection that these certain exercises are benefiting 10 or 15 other things with either no or infrequent practice. So I go into the gym. I like, I haven't forsaken the barbell or the dumbbell. I mean, I did a couple curls the other week with the fat grips and I was totally getting the mega pump, like I was getting ready for my own Mr. Olympia. And I was like, man, that feels good. But I did notice that the kettlebell, I hadn't done these particular curls. I was doing fat grip curls with 70-pound dumbbells. I knocked out about 7 reps and I hadn't done them in a year. I'm like, that should have snapped my tendon, but it didn't. And I was like, okay, this is coming from the kettlebell, but I got a massive pump because when you get stronger with the kettlebell, for the people that are bodybuilders, and one of my mentors is in the Bodybuilding Hall of Fame, a Masters Mr. Olympia winner. I'm not a name dropper. I'm just saying I've got some heavy influences. These aren't my ideas. These are people that have done it. And I'm like, right. Please help me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with bodybuilding, I mean, if you get stronger, you're able to use heavier loads for that same time under tension, which is what they're looking at to get the hypertrophy. And if you can do that with a heavier load progressively, then you're going to continue to lay down new tissue and get bigger muscles.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say to the bodybuilders is learn some of these kettlebell basics and get stronger. And you're going to find in your isolation exercises, you're going to be able to do so much more weight that if you use good form, your muscles aren't going to have an option but to morph.
Right.
And I've seen more than one person do this. They're going from dumbbell laterals with 10 or 15 to like 25, and they're just pumping the full going, and they're going, man, this really feels light. I'm like, well, keep going then. If it feels light, keep going. Your form's good. Yeah. And they're like, man, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, where do you think that came from? And it takes about a minute. And they're like, did the kettlebell swing help me with that? Or did the Turkish get up help me with that? I'm like, yeah, it did. So that what the heck effect is consciously doing your program and finding those exercises, which for your body, when this improves, I know that 4 or 5 other things improve. So I'll give one simple example. There are a lot of different abdominal workouts. I like varying mine, but the ab wheel rollout, I mean, that's like killer. Mm-hmm. So I did those kneeling, and then I progressed to the standing version. And I was working up to, my goal was 20 consecutive reps, which if you've done a standing jackknife, most people at one would feel like their abdomen was going to rip in two. Mm-hmm. And mine did too when I started. Mm-hmm. But as I added reps to that, as my stomach was getting just tighter and just stronger, my deadlift went through the roof. My standing curl went through the roof. My military press went through the roof. My pull-up went up because that was the link between my upper and lower body with my legs. Mm-hmm. I was one piece instead of my arms and shoulders, a weak core, my legs dangling. Yep. I could lock it in like it was a deadlift and pull. Yep. And I was like, I should keep doing this forever or find 2 or 3 other ab exercises. And so I'll do one for a month or so, and then I'll go to another one that I know has the what the heck effect.
Yeah. And you said something really cool there. I'm making a note because that linking and using your strengthening the core specifically, but also one of the topics that we'll hit on in a future podcast is that bracing and breathing properly, it helps you to link your body in as one unit, which I think is something that a lot of people struggle with and don't realize that they need to do. So I'm just making a note so we can hit on that on the next one. So before we came on, we were talking about that what the heck effect, and you mentioned specifically with your overhead press that you were able to drive it up, you doubled and then even tripled your previous bests, only pressing 2 or 3 times in a month.
Twice. Only for the test, and it wasn't
what. Well, my point with that was, I mean, I'm fascinated by that, and as far as the what the heck, like I'm curious to know what your top exercises are to increase overhead press without overhead pressing.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of them. Turkish get up is tried and true, and there are many variations of it. And it's a beautiful thing because when you're have the shoulder in the socket and you're suspending this 32 or 40 or 48 kilogram kettlebell, you're getting enormous time under tension and strength, tension on your shoulder. But here's what's cool. You're not moving the shoulder, so you're not getting the wear and tear, but you're getting the power. Okay? And as you're holding it up, what's locked out?
Tricep.
Your tricep. Mm-hmm. So people keep asking me, I go in GNC and they're like, dude, your arms are like 20 inches. What are you doing? I said, I do Turkish get-ups, pull-ups, and military presses. I curl about 4 times a year. I'm using these big body movements to develop, I'm not saying I'm Phil Heath. I'm saying it's put involuntarily, it's put girth on my arms without worrying about it. Because while one arm is holding you up, the other one's propping you up, and that's nothing but a tricep. Yeah, baby. I got it.
I see it.
It's real, man. So you're getting both sides of your shoulders and arms at the same time. That's one. Second is the kettlebell swing. Kettlebell swing probably has one of the most potent what the heck effects of anything you could choose. Even makes your bench go up. And for a while I was like, insert whiny voice. I'm like, how does the swing make my bench goes up? That's a bunch of crap. I don't believe that. And that's where I got in March. I'm like, you're going to have to show me because I'm going to OD on the swing and we're going to see what happens. But then all of a sudden, after I did 10, 15,000 reps, I got the answer. So the answer is when you finish the swing and you're in a standing plank, here's your finish position and you're totally tense. And I went, oh, wow, that's the finish position of the bench. Duh. You're making all those muscles that are holding it up totally tight and tense 15,000 times, plus your lats, which are, the drawing down of the bar. And then I'm like, well, no wonder my shoulders and, the swing works about 98% of the muscles in your body. Yep. So what's beautiful is no one muscle gets smoked. But they all get a little stronger, and when you roll that up over your body, if 98% of your body got 1% stronger, including your weak links, how much stronger would you be overall? Well, I got my answer in March.
Yeah, and there's that old saying, with neurobiology and stuff that, the neurons or the muscles that fire together wire together. And if you're doing these total body moves,
I'm wiring my whole body like an athlete to work together.
Whether it's Turkish get-ups or kettlebell swings, like you just said, your shoulders, your triceps, your lats, especially on a swing, your glutes and your hamstrings. And now when you lay down on the bench, if you bring your feet back and you're benching with an arch like a power lifter,
got some tension, man.
That's how it drives up your bench
press.
Body,
the
overhead
bar
press. Yep.
Yeah, every time people do this and they get under the bar, they say the same thing. They say, they'll grab it and they'll do the rep and I'll say, how did it feel? And they go, it feels light. Mm-hmm. Well, compared to what it did feel, yeah, it is. It does feel light. Pull-ups or chin-ups weighted are like the hanging, for me, I call them the hanging version of the deadlift.
Okay.
Because that chin up is getting your anterior chain, your grip, your forearms, your bicep. Mm-hmm. I started doing it after bone spur surgery because you have to set your shoulder in the socket before you pull, and it was for shoulder health. Yeah. But I noticed it was making my arms, forearms, grip, my lats, my abs, even when I started trying weighting my feet, when I put ankle weights on, I could feel the connection between my feet through my pelvis to my upper body. And I was like, wow, that's really heavy, man. I feel that that's going to make me strong. I felt like I discovered something. I hadn't, but it was the first time for me. But there's power in those
aha moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you maybe you didn't invent it, but it was a discovery for you.
It was a discovery for me that had like huge ramifications. And also, I'm a big proponent of consciously working grip, mm-hmm. whether it's fat grips, grippers, Ironman wrist roller, mm-hmm. Deadlifts with no wraps with this type of grip where it's just prying it out of my fingers. I noticed that when my deadlifts went up and I started doing my pull-ups, I gained my previous best volume. I think it was 15, and then I went from 15 to 24 in one jump, which was for somebody it's 265. It's not the same. Right. I'm a recovering weak vertical puller, but my top set was 5 or 6, and then I went 5, 5, 7, and could have done more. And I'm like, I knew if I got over 5, it's going to be easier for me to get to 7 to 15 than it was to get from 0 to 5.
Yeah.
If I do chin-ups, I've done as much as 40 kilos. But now I flip my hands over. I had a shoulder issue, and I had to get my thoracic spine opened up to where I could even draw it down because I had so much scar tissue. That's another reason you don't want to get injured. I mean, to rehab, it takes so long. So if you can get strong and be safe, you can still have the muscles. You can still go in there and show everybody what a beast you are.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do it for a lot longer.
That is awesome, man. You got me fired up. I want to go lift some weights now.
Well, I'm going to after this.
Well, I think this is plenty. This is a ton of information for one podcast. So okay. Russ, we're going to wrap this up. And if you're game, I'd love to have you back on down the road. We'll do another episode and we'll talk about some of these other topics that we never even got to today.
Okay.
I know you mentioned this earlier. You're working on a new website. Facebook's probably the best way to contact you. So we always want to make sure our guests, let people know where to find more information about them. So,
right.
If you guys missed that earlier, Google Russ Moon and, check him out on Facebook, the new website. What is the website when it's ready?
The URL is www.russ as in Sam, moonow.com.
Okay. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, so folks can just click on that.
Yeah, that's going to be done. I mean, the new menus were up last night. I was at the point where I was saying I liked the direction it was going, and I was like paring it down, mm-hmm. telling people to take stuff out. I said, I'm going to have a blog there, videos, how to engage me, and then I'm going to have what I think I'm going to call it training log, where I'm going to get into the things I'm doing that are generating the 300% gains.
Yeah.
But that portion of the site is going to be pay to view. It's going to be subscription, because I had so many people said, hey, I'm still reading your blogs from 2 years ago. This is like a book level. And I was like, okay, A, it's good, but B, if I'm going to put all this time and effort and 25,000 into my certs, if somebody wants to get these shortcuts that are going to get them to where they want to go faster, that should be worth $10 a month. I mean, that's like the price of a high-powered protein drink or a couple Monsters. I feel very comfortable if you were to spend that much money and come back to me later and tell me I didn't get my $10 worth, I'd refund it, because I don't think that's going to happen. But this is how we go to all these trainings and the travel and the supplements and the time training. And the bottom line is, it's not about being vampiric about the money, but you have to make enough money to stay in business, to keep doing what you're doing, to be able to help other people.
Right.
I mean, otherwise the House of Strength would be free.
Right.
Because I know you love it that much.
That's true. So
I'd love to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'd love to have you back. So before we let you go, we got the 1-2 close that we do with every episode. Your biggest take home from this particular podcast, if people only take one thing away from this, what do you want them to leave here with?
If they take one thing away, I would say the truth is wherever you find it. So my example would be, I made a conscious effort to study CrossFit, the hard style Russian dragon door, the strong first style, to educate myself, apply the techniques, and because the fundamentals will pretty much work for everyone, but each person's body structure is a little different. You have to try it long enough to find out what works for you.
Right.
It may not be, all of it might be identical with your neighbor. So you got to go through that process and make sure that you try it long enough to be fair. You're not a program hopper, and that you're doing the work. And then the second piece I would say, part of that is I call it the tripod of progression. So you have your training, your nutrition, and your recovery. So early in my career, I'm reading the Muscle and Fitness and Arnold and all these guys, destroying their bodies with these huge volume things. And I thought it was cool. That's part of it. But if you're not paying the same amount of attention to your nutrition and recovery, you're leaving a lot of gains on the table and you're shortchanging yourself. So what I would plead with someone to do is like, hey, if you're one of those warriors who's willing to go to the House of Strength and do the work, pay as much attention to your nutrition and recovery so that you're reaping all the benefits from your training that you can. And what you'll find is that will allow you to catch up and pass people who are way more developed than you, but they're relying just on the training.
Yeah.
So they're basically leaving two legs of the tripod and they're saying, I don't need that. But when you put the whole package together, you'll zoom up behind them so fast. Plus, you'll feel better while you do it. You'll be like, oh, yeah, you'll feel like you discovered the secret.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I love it, man. That's great.
It's a holistic approach.
Yes, definitely.
The lifestyle.
Yep. Lifestyle, longevity. It's, like you said, holistic. That's such a great word for it. So, well, that's going to do it for this episode. Russ, thanks a lot for hanging out with us and for sharing so much awesome information. To everybody that stay tuned for this, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you check out the blog version of this. We'll have show notes, houseofstrengthgym.com, and check us out on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. And until then, we'll see you next time.